The Prince and the Pauper.
Tom Canty lived in a shabby wooden house in Offal Court, one of the poorest neighborhoods in 16th century London. His mother was a beggar, and his father, John Canty, was a thief. Poor Tom dressed in rags, slept on filthy blankets, and ate a meager diet. Tom was forced by his father to beg on the streets every day. If he returned home empty-handed, his father would beat him. Tom's only source of kindness came from Father Andrew, an old priest who taught him to read and told him stories about the nobility. Tom dreamed about becoming a gentleman, and in his dreams, he found temporary relief from his miserable conditions. One day, in the midst of daydreaming, Tom wandered into Westminster, an aristocratic neighborhood full of rich and elegant palaces. There he saw Edward Tudor, son of King Henry VIII, playing on the other side of the royal fence. Tom stopped to watch the prince play, but a guard suddenly grabbed him by the hand and tried to drag him away. The struggle between Tom and the guard caught Edward's attention. Feeling sorry for the boy, Edward scolded the guard and invited Tom into his palace.
Inside the palace, Tom and Edward related their life stories to each other. While Tom admired Edward's rich surroundings, Edward envied Tom's freedom. The two boys began to wonder what it would feel like to trade roles. When they put on each other's clothes, they discovered they looked identical to each other. When the prince noticed a bruise on Tom's hand, he ran out to admonish the guard, forgetting that he was still dressed as a pauper. The guard, unaware of the boy's true identity, pushed him out the gates and chased him away. "I am the Prince of Wales," Edward protested, but no one believed him. Edward wandered the streets of London until John Canty spotted him and dragged him to Offal Court. Canty assumed his son had gone mad when Edward claimed to be the prince. He taunted the child in front of their neighbors and beat him for having brought home no money. Meanwhile, Tom was left alone inside the palace. He enjoyed his new surroundings at first, but then became worried when members of the court noticed his odd behavior. Convinced that the prince had lost his mind, the king told the boy never to mention anything about Offal Court again.
While Tom was living the life of a prince, a messenger brought news to him that King Henry VIII had died. Tom was to become the king. With new responsibilities to fulfill, Tom spent his days listening to reports on affairs of the state and trying to remember important royal matters. In the meantime, Edward had escaped Offal Court and was on the run from Canty. On the streets, he met beggars and thieves who told him many stories about the injustices of the law. Very angry, Edward declared that these laws must be abolished. Edward returned to Westminster on the day of Tom's coronation. Just as the crown was being placed on Tom's head, Edward stepped forward and protested, "I am the king." The guards ran to seize Edward, but Tom stopped them. "Touch him not. He is the king." To prove who was the true monarch, Tom and Edward were asked a question that only the real prince could answer. "Where is the Great Seal of England?" Edward replied correctly, establishing his right to the throne. King Edward placed Tom Canty under his protection. The new king ruled kindly and always remembered his brief life as a pauper.